As the late afternoon sun cast long shadows through the airplane windows, Olivia Matthews pressed her hand against her coat pocket for the 100th time, feeling the meager contents of her wallet. Exactly $43 that needed to last until her next paycheck. Beside her, her 5-year-old daughter Lily slept peacefully, her small head resting against the worn fabric of the economy seat. They were flying back from visiting Olivia's sick grandmother in Chicago, a trip they could barely afford, but couldn't avoid. The flight attendant's voice crackled over the intercom, announcing their descent into Boston. Olivia gently stroked Lily's auburn curls, so similar to her own. Life hadn't been easy since Tom walked out 2 years ago, leaving them with nothing but bills and broken promises. She worked 2 jobs, waitressing during the day and doing virtual customer service at night, just to keep their tiny 1-bedroom apartment and provide for Lily's needs. Their apartment wasn't much, but Olivia had done her best to make it a home. She'd painted Lily's corner of their shared bedroom in soft lavender, hung fairy lights above her small bed, and created a reading nook with pillows and a basket of second-hand books. Every night, no matter how exhausted she was, Olivia would read to Lily until her daughter drifted off to sleep. Those precious moments made all the struggles worthwhile. The trip to Chicago had drained their emergency fund, but they had no choice. Grandma Rose was getting worse and the doctors weren't optimistic. Olivia couldn't bear the thought of Lily not seeing her great-grandmother one last time. The memory of Rose's face lighting up when they walked into her hospital room made the financial sacrifice worth it. As passengers began gathering their belongings, Olivia noticed an elderly gentleman in the row ahead, struggling to retrieve his carry-on bag. His hands trembled slightly as he reached up, and there was a confused look in his pale blue eyes. She was about to offer help when something caught her eye. A leather wallet had slipped from his jacket pocket onto the floor. Time seemed to slow as Olivia stared at the wallet. Her heart pounded as she picked it up, feeling its weight. Through the slightly open fold, she glimpsed several $100 bills. The amount inside could solve so many problems: the overdue rent, Lily's needed dental work, the mounting credit card debt. No one had seen her pick it up. The old man seemed confused. He might not even remember where he lost it. "Mommy, are we there?" Lily's sleepy voice snapped Olivia back to reality. She quickly slipped the wallet into her bag, telling herself she would think about what to do once they got off the plane. The weight of it seemed to pull at her conscience, making her stomach churn with anxiety. The elderly man was still struggling with his bag. "Sir, let me help you with that," Olivia offered, lifting herself from her seat. Up close, she noticed his expensive but slightly disheveled clothing and the medical alert bracelet on his wrist. His silver hair was neatly combed, but his tie was slightly askew and one of his shoes was untied. "Thank you, dear. So kind of you." He smiled warmly, though his eyes held a hint of uncertainty. "I'm Richard Anderson. I think I'm going to meet my son." "Yes, Michael should be waiting." He paused, looking momentarily lost. "At least I believe it's today he's meeting me." Olivia's stomach tightened with guilt as she helped him with the bag. The man clearly had Alzheimer's, making her possession of his wallet even more morally questionable. She thought about her own grandmother, how vulnerable she had become lately, and shame crept up her neck like a hot tide. In the terminal, Lily tugged at her hand, pointing at a small cafe. "Mommy, I'm hungry. Can we get a cookie?" The hope in her daughter's eyes made Olivia's heart ache. She'd packed their lunch to save money, but the sandwiches had been eaten hours ago. "Not today, sweetheart. We need to save our money, remember?" Lily's disappointed face was another twist of the knife. The wallet in Olivia's bag felt like it was burning a hole through the fabric. She tried to push away thoughts of all the things that money could provide. New winter boots for Lily, the electricity bill that was 2 weeks overdue, maybe even a small Christmas fund. They followed the crowd toward baggage claim, where Olivia spotted Richard again. He was standing alone, looking increasingly distressed as he patted his pockets. "My wallet," she heard him mumble. "I had it on the plane. I need to call Michael, but I can't remember." His hands trembled more violently now as he searched his pockets again and again. A memory flashed through Olivia's mind. Her grandmother Rose just last week, becoming agitated when she couldn't find her reading glasses, which were perched on top of her head. The same fear and confusion she saw in Richard's eyes now had been in Rose's that day. The parallel made her feel sick with guilt. Lily, observant as always, tugged at Olivia's sleeve. "Mommy, the nice man looks scared. Can we help him?" Her daughter's innocent concern made the situation even more challenging. What kind of example would she be setting if she kept the wallet? But then, What kind of mother was she if she couldn't provide for her child's basic needs? A young businessman rushed past, accidentally bumping into Richard and making him stumble. Olivia instinctively reached out to steady him, even as her other hand clutched her bag containing his wallet. The old man's eyes were filling with tears of frustration and fear. "I need to find Michael," he repeated. "He said he'd be here, but I don't remember where. And my wallet." His voice trailed off as he looked around the crowded terminal in confusion. A few travelers glanced their way but kept moving, their own destinations more pressing than an old man's distress. Olivia stood frozen, watching other travelers stream past, everyone absorbed in their own worlds. The wallet contained enough money to change her and Lily's lives, to give them breathing room, to stop the constant struggle. She could walk away right now, use the money to finally get ahead, give Lily the life she deserved. But as she looked at Richard's frightened face, she saw her own grandmother, the reason for their Chicago trip, who was also beginning to show signs of memory loss. The thought of someone taking advantage of her in a vulnerable moment made Olivia's decision crystallize. She reached into her bag, fingers trembling as they closed around the leather wallet. "Mr. Anderson," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, but before she could continue, a deep voice called out from across the terminal. "Dad, there you are." A tall man in his early 40s was hurrying toward them, relief evident on his handsome face. He wore a well-cut suit that spoke of success, but his warm brown eyes held genuine concern as he approached his father. Olivia's hand tightened around the wallet as Michael Anderson drew near. This was her last chance to walk away, to choose financial security over conscience. Her gaze dropped to Lily, who was watching the scene with innocent curiosity, and she knew what she had to do. Suddenly, a deafening alarm blared through the terminal. Emergency lights began flashing, and an automated voice announced an immediate evacuation. The crowd around them erupted into chaos, people pushing and shoving toward the exits. In the confusion, Olivia felt Lily's small hand slip from hers. "Lily!" she screamed, her heart stopping as her daughter disappeared into the sea of moving bodies. The wallet in her bag now meant nothing compared to the terror of losing her child in the panicking crowd. "Lily!" Olivia screamed again, her voice lost in the chaos of the evacuation. She spun around frantically, trying to spot her daughter's pink backpack in the crowd. The wallet, which had seemed so important moments ago, was forgotten as panic seized her chest. People continued pushing past her, heading toward the emergency exits as security guards directed the flow of traffic. "Please, my daughter." She grabbed the arm of a passing guard. "She's 5, wearing a pink backpack and purple jacket." The guard spoke into his radio, relaying the description, but Olivia barely heard him over the pounding of her heart. "Dad, stay right here." Michael Anderson's authoritative voice cut through the noise. He had guided his father to a bench against the wall, away from the main crowd. "I'm going to help look for the little girl." Richard nodded, clutching his carry-on bag, looking disoriented but staying put. Michael joined Olivia in her search, his height giving him an advantage as he scanned over the heads of the rushing crowd. "We'll find her," he assured Olivia, his presence somehow steadying in the midst of chaos. "What's her name?" "Lily," Olivia choked out, still searching desperately. "She's shy with strangers. She must be terrified." Tears threatened to spill from her eyes, but she forced them back. She needed to stay focused. Then, through a gap in the moving bodies, she spotted a flash of purple near the cafe they had passed earlier. "There!" she pointed, already pushing through the crowd. Michael followed, helping clear a path. They found Lily huddled under a table, tears streaming down her face. "Mommy!" she cried, launching herself into Olivia's arms. Olivia held her daughter tight, her own body shaking with relief. "Smart girl finding a safe spot," Michael commented, his voice gentle. "Just like a little mouse finding her hideaway." Lily peeked at him over Olivia's shoulder, managing a small smile despite her tears. The alarm suddenly stopped, and a new announcement echoed through the terminal. "All clear. The evacuation has been cancelled. Please return to normal operations. We repeat, all clear." As the chaos subsided, reality came crashing back. The wallet. Olivia's hand went to her bag, where it still sat, heavy with possibilities and guilt. She looked at Michael, who was helping his father back to his feet, and knew she couldn't delay the right thing any longer. "Mr. Anderson," she started, her voice shaking slightly, "I found something on the plane." She pulled out the wallet, holding it out to Richard. "It fell from your pocket." Michael's eyes widened as he recognized his father's wallet, but before he could speak, Richard smiled broadly. "Oh, thank you, dear, but I already have my wallet right here." He patted his jacket pocket, then frowned when he felt nothing. Confusion clouded his features as he checked his other pockets. "Dad," Michael said softly, taking the wallet from Olivia, "this is yours. The kind lady found it for you." He looked at Olivia, his eyes full of gratitude and something else she couldn't quite read. "Thank you, there's over $2,000 in here. Dad insists on carrying cash, no matter how many times I tell him not to." Olivia's heart skipped. $2,000. More money than she made in a month. She felt Lily's small hand slip into hers, and the rightness of her decision washed over her, despite the ache in her chest. "You must let me thank you properly," Michael insisted. "Please join us for dinner. Dad's favorite restaurant is just down the street, and after everything that's happened—" He glanced at his father, who was now happily showing Lily a photo from his wallet, the earlier confusion forgotten. "Oh, I couldn't," Olivia started, but Lily tugged at her hand. "Please, Mommy. The nice man called me a smart mouse." Her daughter's eyes were pleading, and Olivia realized she had no good reason to refuse. Over dinner at a cozy Italian restaurant, Olivia learned that Michael was a widowed architect who had moved back to Boston 2 years ago to help care for his father. Richard, in his more lucid moments, shared stories about his late wife and their travels around the world. Lily sat between her mother and Richard, happily twirling pasta and giggling at the old man's gentle jokes. As the evening progressed, Olivia found herself opening up about her own struggles, the 2 jobs, the mounting bills, her grandmother's illness. Michael listened with genuine interest, occasionally offering practical suggestions that showed he understood the challenges of single parenthood. "You know," he said as they finished their dessert, "my firm is actually looking for an office manager. The hours would be regular, and the pay is significantly better than what you're making now. Would you be interested?" Olivia stared at him, hardly daring to hope. "But you barely know me." Michael smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "I know you found a wallet full of cash and returned it, despite obviously needing the money. I know you're working 2 jobs to support your daughter, and I know you helped my father when he was confused and frightened. That tells me everything I need to know about your character." Richard, who had been dozing slightly in his chair, suddenly perked up. "Michael, why don't you show Olivia that lovely park near your office tomorrow? The one with the duck pond?" He winked at Lily. "There are baby ducks this time of year." Michael flushed slightly, but his eyes met Olivia's with warmth. "Actually, that's not a bad idea. Would you and Lily like to meet for lunch tomorrow? We could discuss the job opportunity, and Lily could see the ducks." As Olivia opened her mouth to respond, a commotion from the kitchen interrupted them. Smoke began pouring from behind the swinging doors, and the fire alarm shrieked to life. Around them, other diners began to stand, looking concerned. "Not again," Lily whispered, clutching Olivia's hand. But this time Michael was already organizing their group, calmly helping his father up while keeping a reassuring hand on Lily's shoulder. As they moved toward the exit, Olivia noticed how naturally they had fallen into a unit, protecting and supporting each other. Just before they reached the door, she heard Richard murmur to his son, "She reminds me of your mother, you know. Same kind heart." Michael's response was lost in the chaos of the evacuation, but the look he gave Olivia sent warmth spreading through her chest, making her momentarily forget the uncertainty that lay ahead. The next morning dawned bright and crisp, a perfect autumn day in Boston. Olivia stood in front of her small closet, scrutinizing her limited selection of professional clothing. Her nicest blouse had a small coffee stain that she desperately tried to hide with a cardigan. The job interview with Michael's firm wasn't until afternoon, but her stomach already churned with nervous anticipation. "Mommy, can I wear my duck dress to see the baby ducks?" Lily called from their shared bedroom. The duck dress was a thrift store find from last summer, now slightly too small but still Lily's favorite. Olivia smiled, remembering how excited her daughter had been about meeting Michael and Richard for lunch at the park before the interview. As she helped Lily get dressed, her phone buzzed with a text message. Her heart sank as she read it. Her grandmother's condition had worsened overnight. The doctors weren't optimistic. She needed to return to Chicago immediately, but the thought of another plane ticket made her feel sick. She'd already maxed out her credit card for the last trip. "Is Great-Grandma Rose okay?" Lily asked, noticing her mother's distress. The perceptiveness of children never ceased to amaze Olivia. "She's not feeling well, sweetheart. We might need to—" Her phone buzzed again, this time with a call from her morning waitressing job. Her manager sounded angry. "Where are you? Your shift started 20 minutes ago." Olivia's blood ran cold. In all the excitement of yesterday and preparation for the interview, she'd completely forgotten about her morning shift. "Linda, I'm so sorry. I can be there in 30 minutes. "Don't bother," Linda cut her off. "This isn't the first time you've been late. We need reliable people, Olivia. Don't come back." The line went dead. Olivia sat heavily on the bed, her hands shaking. Everything was falling apart. No morning job meant no rent money. No rent money meant possible eviction. And now her grandmother... A knock at the door startled her from her spiral of worry. Through the peephole she saw Richard standing there, looking confused and agitated. She quickly opened the door. "I can't find Michael," he said, his voice trembling. "The house was empty when I woke up. I took a taxi, but I'm not sure." He trailed off, looking around the hallway with increasing anxiety. "Mr. Anderson, please come in." Olivia guided him inside their tiny apartment. "Let me call Michael for you." But when she tried the number he'd given her yesterday, it went straight to voicemail. Lily approached Richard cautiously. "Would you like to see my duck dress?" she asked, her natural kindness shining through. The old man's face brightened slightly as Lily twirled, showing off the faded pattern. Olivia's phone buzzed again. Another text from Chicago. Her grandmother had been moved to intensive care. Family should come now if they wanted to say goodbye. Tears blurred her vision as she tried to think what to do. Just then, Michael burst through the still open door, out of breath and clearly worried. "Dad, thank God." He enveloped his father in a hug. "I was just in the shower when you left. I've been driving all over looking for you." He turned to Olivia, his relief shifting to concern as he noticed her tears. "What's wrong?" Before she could answer, Richard spoke up, suddenly more lucid than he'd been all morning. "Michael, give me your phone." His son handed it over, looking puzzled. Richard quickly tapped at the screen with surprising dexterity. "There," he said, showing them the phone. "I just bought 3 tickets to Chicago on the next flight. My treat." He looked at Olivia with clear eyes. A woman should be with her grandmother at a time like this. "Mr. Anderson, I couldn't possibly," Olivia started, but Richard held up his hand. "I may be losing my memory, but I know what matters. Family matters. Love matters." He glanced meaningfully at his son. "And sometimes people need a little help to do what needs to be done." Michael stepped closer to Olivia, his voice soft. "Let us help, please. The job will still be here when you get back. In fact," he pulled out a business card and wrote something on the back. "This is the HR director's direct line. I've already told her about you. Call her when you return, no matter what." Olivia looked around her tiny apartment, at Lily still in her duck dress, at Richard's kind face, at Michael's concerned eyes. Her world was shifting, transforming in ways she never expected. The morning's disasters suddenly seemed less overwhelming. "We should pack," she said finally, wiping her eyes. "But I don't know how long we'll need to stay." "I took care of that too," Richard announced proudly, pointing to his phone. "I booked the tickets for an open return. Sometimes I remember how to do things." He winked at Lily, who giggled. As they rushed to pack and get to the airport, Olivia noticed how naturally Michael took charge, organizing their group with quiet efficiency. He seemed to anticipate her needs before she voiced them, somehow knowing exactly when to offer help and when to step back. In the taxi to the airport, Lily fell asleep between Richard and Olivia, her head resting against the old man's arm. He smiled down at her, patting her hand gently. "You know," he said quietly to Olivia, "my Catherine would have loved you both." His eyes grew distant with memory. She always said that true character shows itself in how we help others, even when we're struggling ourselves. Michael, sitting in the front seat, turned to look at them, his eyes meeting Olivia's in a gaze that held volumes of unspoken understanding. Just yesterday, she had been a struggling single mother with a wallet full of temptation. Now she was heading back to Chicago, surrounded by people who seemed to have walked into her life at exactly the right moment. The taxi driver swerved suddenly, honking at a car that had cut him off. The sharp movement woke Lily, who sat up with a start. "Are we going to see Great-Grandma Rose?" she asked sleepily. "Yes, sweetheart," Olivia answered, her heart both heavy and somehow lighter than it had been in years. "And we're not going alone." 3 weeks had passed since that fateful taxi ride to the airport. Autumn was now in full swing in Boston, painting the trees in brilliant shades of red and gold. Olivia stood at her new office window, watching leaves dance across the courtyard below. The past weeks had brought more changes than she could have imagined. That day she found Richard's wallet on the plane. Grandma Rose had rallied when they arrived in Chicago, her face lighting up at the sight of not just Olivia and Lily, but their two unexpected companions. Richard had spent hours by Rose's bedside, sharing stories of his own journey with memory loss, making her laugh even on difficult days. Michael had quietly arranged for the best geriatric specialists to consult on her case, and within a week, a new treatment plan had given Rose a renewed lease on life. "Your young man is a keeper," Rose had whispered to Olivia one evening when Michael was helping Lily build a card house in the corner of the hospital room. "He looks at you the way your grandfather used to look at me." Now, back in Boston, Olivia's life had transformed in ways that still amazed her. The office manager position at Michael's architectural firm paid more than both her previous jobs combined. Her new desk held a framed drawing Lily had made of their extended family. Stick figures of herself, Olivia, Michael, Richard, and great-grandma Rose, all holding hands under a rainbow. A knock at her office door pulled her from her reverie. Michael stood there, his tie slightly askew as usual, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Ready for the client meeting?" he asked, setting 1 cup on her desk. Their fingers brushed as she reached for it, sending familiar warmth through her chest. "Almost," she replied, gathering her files. "Is your father still coming for dinner tonight? Lily's been practicing her presentation all week." Michael's eyes crinkled with amusement. "Dad wouldn't miss it for the world. He's already called me twice to remind me about the important meeting with my favorite mouse." Richard's good days still outnumbered the bad ones, and his relationship with Lily had blossomed into something precious. Every Thursday, he would visit their new apartment. Michael had helped them find an affordable 2-bedroom near his father's home, and Lily would teach him everything she was learning in kindergarten. It helped keep his mind sharp, the doctors said, but Olivia suspected it helped his heart even more. The client meeting went smoothly, but Olivia found herself distracted. Tonight wasn't just their regular Thursday dinner. Michael had asked her to meet him in the park afterward, at the duck pond where they'd never made it that first day. Something in his voice when he asked had made her heart skip. Evening found them strolling around the pond, the setting sun painting the water in shades of gold and pink. Lily and Richard sat on a nearby bench, heads bent together over a book of duck facts Richard had bought her. "Do you believe in fate?" Michael asked suddenly, stopping to face her. 3 weeks ago, my father got on a plane to visit me, something he rarely does alone anymore. He sat in front of a woman who would not only find and return his wallet, but would also help him when he was lost and confused. A woman who needed exactly the kind of job my firm was looking to fill. A woman whose daughter would bring light back into his life. He took her hands in his. "A woman I've fallen completely in love with." Olivia's breath caught in her throat. "Michael, I know it's fast," he continued, his thumbs tracing circles on her palms. "But when you know, you know. My father says that's how it was with my mother. One moment she was a stranger, the next she was his whole world." From the bench they heard Lily's delighted giggle as Richard made duck noises to accompany their reading. The sound seemed to encompass everything that had changed in their lives. "That day on the plane," Olivia said softly, "when I found the wallet, I was so tempted. We were struggling so much, and that money could have solved so many problems. But seeing your father, confused and afraid, all I could think about was my own grandmother, how vulnerable she was becoming. I couldn't take advantage of that, no matter how much we needed the money." Michael pulled her closer. "That decision led us here, to this moment." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. "I'm not proposing, not yet, but I want you to have this." Inside the box was a delicate silver pendant in the shape of a wallet. Olivia laughed through sudden tears as he fastened it around her neck. "To remind you," he said, "that sometimes doing the right thing, even when it's hard, can lead to something beautiful." "Mummy, look!" Lily called out. She and Richard were pointing at a family of ducks swimming past, the babies following their mother in a perfect line. "Just like us," Richard observed clearly, smiling at the couple by the water. A family finding each other, one step at a time. As the last rays of sunlight painted the sky in brilliant colors, Michael leaned down and kissed Olivia softly. Behind them, Lily clapped her hands in delight while Richard pretended to cover his eyes. Later that night, after Lily was asleep and Richard had been driven home by his caregiver, Olivia stood in her new kitchen, touching the wallet pendant at her throat. On her refrigerator hung her first real paycheck, her daughter's artwork, and a photograph taken at Grandma Rose's hospital room, all of them together, smiling, connected by chance and choice and the simple act of doing the right thing. Her phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "Thank you for finding my father's wallet, and thank you for helping me find my heart." Olivia smiled, remembering the frightened woman on that plane 3 weeks ago, not knowing that her moment of moral crisis would lead to everything she'd ever wanted: security, love, family, and a future bright with promise. Sometimes the smallest choices could change everything. Sometimes losing a wallet could help you find a home.